You're listening to the Disruptive Franchise Podcast with Stacey Can, the podcast that celebrates innovation in franchising and peeks behind the curtain of failure, success, and the future of the franchise industry. Let's talk about the real reason that your prospects are ghosting you after you've done a discovery call with them. It's so painful. It's like the worst cold shoulder in the world because you've put so much in to get them on a call. And then nothing. And it is real painful. I've had this happen to me a few times, and you kind of like, you get a good feel and there's a good vibe on the call and they're excited and you're like, yep, they're the one, woohoo! And then crickets, nothing happens. And you follow up and you follow up again and nothing happens. Or they come back and they say, actually, it's not the right time. Oh, I'm really sorry. I'd love to, but I can't afford it. It's like, it's like banging your head against a brick wall. But it's very common. It does happen. There's a few really important things that we need to unpick in this episode and talk about it. The real reason that they're going quiet is not necessarily what you think it is. You think that maybe they've decided that they can't afford it. You think that maybe, the time's just not right for them. Right? We don't want to pressure sell. Okay, I'm really against pressure selling. So really and truly, what's happening behind the scenes is that you are either then not following up as sporadically as you should, as intentionally as you should be, and so your follow-ups have become sporadic. Now, if that's the case, then that quiet prospect is not going to be hearing from you and you're not staying top of mind. So if you're sporadically following up rather than consistently or in an automated way, even better, you're causing yourself an issue here. A lot of the time, franchisors, they stop the follow-up because they think, well, they're not interested, they haven't come back to me. And that's logical in our brains. We are all a little bit sensitive to rejection in various forms, and not hearing and being really frustrating is like, it's not something that we want to deal with, is it? Let's face it. Or maybe your follow-ups, you have a process in place, but your follow-up process kind of is just resting on emails and nothing else. And potentially you're only doing a couple of follow-ups. So on average, we know that actually to get somebody to buy something, it's like 7 or 8 follow-ups now needed, not the 1 or the 2. Most people follow up once and they give up. So your prospect has gone quiet, having done the discovery call or whatever kind of iteration you have. And you've stopped contacting them and you're upset because you're not getting the sale, right? So you can see it's a vicious circle here. We don't really want that vicious circle going around in our heads. If you're getting the leads in as well, it can be quite soul destroying. You're doing all this marketing, you're working quite hard, the leads are coming in, they're just not going anywhere. It could be that they're not the right person for you, but they've done all this work to get on a call. So there's a few things that might be going on here, but the first thing I really want to be clear on, like 3 minutes into the episode, is that a quiet prospect is different to a dead prospect. Okay, if the prospect is telling you they're not interested, then that's probably a whole nother episode. The quiet prospect who has said nothing, they're not dead yet. Let's not treat them like they've gone. There are loads of reasons why they may not have come back to you. Maybe they need more thinking time. Maybe there's something there that doesn't quite feel right for them. But let's put the franchisee hat on here. Just for a minute, let's stop thinking like a franchisor and let's think about the franchisee. They've been all through your brochure, probably. They've got all the information. They had the information about pricing. I would strongly recommend you give them the information about pricing before they get on a call, because if you're just surprising them with, hey, and it's £10,000, like, whoa there. Now I've got to go and do an awful lot of thinking. So ideally, I would give them the pricing before the call, because then if that's not for them, or they genuinely can't afford it, or don't feel like they want to take that risk, then they can opt out before you've wasted your time on a call. So don't gatekeep the information. Be free with the information once they are in your kind of nurture process. That's really important. But let's say that they've been through all of this process. as someone who's bought many franchises, you don't just sit there and think, oh yeah, I might do that, and then do something else. You think about it all the time. You think about, okay, I'm thinking about buying this franchise. What's day-to-day life going to look like? How's it going to work for the kids? What about the security of losing my job? What if I can't afford to pay the mortgage on time? You're going through all of these situations in your head constantly because it's a big considered decision to leave your job or buy a franchise, right? So it's really not what you think it is. Okay, the prospect hasn't just gone quiet because suddenly they've forgotten about you. But the follow-ups are really important because what the follow-ups do is they just keep you important enough in the decision-making process that you stay top of mind to make the decision. And what I would be asking on the franchise call as well, like we don't want to pressure sell, we don't want to put them in a situation. You shouldn't have 100% close rate on a franchise call because not 100% of the people that make it to the call are going to be right for you. That's a big red flag. But let's say you're not quite hitting 30% call closure rates. You've either got a problem where they're not qualified enough or they're not the right people on the call, or if they are the right people on the call, you are not closing them down. Franchisors don't like to close, in my experience, because we don't want to feel like we're pressure selling. But if you're not asking for the sale, it's much harder to get the sale in the first place. Okay, so where it's appropriate, I would be asking on the call, what would make this a no-brainer for you? And let them talk. Let them tell you what those little niggles are in the back of their head, because it might be really easy things for you to address on the call. So let's say we've done all of that, best practice is all in, and they've still gone quiet. The best thing you can do is be visible. Okay, so yep, doing the follow-ups, but also posting on social media as well. They found you somewhere. They have stalked you like all over your socials. So if you don't talk about franchise recruitment anymore, bringing in new franchisees of what it's like to be a franchisee, you're kind of giving them a bit of a dodgy signal of like you don't care, or that you're a bit shy about it, or that you've lost a bit of intent and conviction there. So make sure that you are being consistent with your messaging through socials as well as emailing them. The other reason that a lot of franchisees go quiet, prospects go quiet after the call, is because, as well as being absolutely terrified to make that decision, there are other people in their life that they maybe need to consider. Do they need to discuss it with a partner? Do they need to figure out, what does that childcare bit look like? Are they a teacher and they can only leave at certain times? So there's other stuff going on for them. With all of those things, hopefully you have a really robust recruitment process that helps you. And this is where I see an awful lot of people fall down. A lot of franchisors tell me that they're being ghosted effectively. The prospect's gone quiet, and they're not really set up to do anything about it. Maybe they haven't given enough detail at the front end before the call. So let's say your process is download the brochure, get on a call. That's a really quick window. And in recruitment, we would always say, well, speed is best, right? A day older is a day colder. But this is not recruitment for a job. This is recruitment for an entire lifestyle change. Everything in their life gets affected by this thing, right? So if you're trying to rush them on the call and they haven't had enough education, the reason that they might have gone quiet is they might now need to just go back and reassure themselves, or like build that knowledge in of like, okay, is this dodgy or not? We're going to question it. Okay, we're always going to question it. Is it dodgy? Is a franchise okay? They're going to talk to their friends and family. Their friends and family aren't going to get it because they haven't had the education either. So make sure that your front end is loaded before getting them on the call, so that they come to the call with all of the understanding. If you've just done that discovery call and had to explain to them what a franchise is and that it's an investment opportunity, that is a lot. That's a lot to take. We're in franchising. We are used to this talk, but they are not. So make sure that your nurture process is not just reliant on like the 5 emails to get them on the call and then is non-existent afterwards. You need to build in a robust system that handles for you what happens if somebody's not ready, without trying to force them into a call, without trying to push them into something or feel like you're walking away. It's super, super important. So do you have a process in place? And where most people fall down here is they don't. It's really simple. Emails, they get lost. They get half read in the middle of doing something else. WhatsApp, really powerful introduction into your nurture funnel, not just pre-call, but post-call as well. The open rates on WhatsApp are insane versus email, which you're kind of hoping for about 25% open rate. So be important enough that you're in their WhatsApp rather than just in their inbox for when they check their inbox. Make sure that you are able to consistently be in touch with them without it overloading you, because you haven't got time. That's why you're not doing the follow-ups right. Send them a personalized follow-up after the call. Drop them a voice note on WhatsApp or however you do it. But also, you're going to have to be patient in that this is not, I'm going to go buy a loaf of bread, which brand do I want? This is, I'm going to upheaval and change my entire life. So stick with them, even when they're quiet, because remember what I said, quiet prospect is not a dead prospect. Until they say, no, I'm not interested, or they unsubscribe quietly, keep going with the follow-up. And think about, how can you structure out an extended nurture sequence? What do they need to hear from you after that call to make them feel better? And this is why my process includes that post follow-up when they're not ready. We're designed for this because I know that it happens. I know what a difference it makes. Franchisees can take up to 6 months to sign on to join you. I've had franchisee prospects come back to me after a year, 2 years even, and say it just wasn't the right time. And when I look back over the records, they just disappeared. They didn't come and tell me that it wasn't the right time because they were busy. So don't assume that everything is like dead. Build in a process post-call that supports them to continue with their decision-making process. Keep educating them about what a franchise is. What is the cost of them not taking action now? How different could their life be? What's the testimonials? What are the social proof that you've got there? But above all, just stay top of mind, because quiet is not out of the race. For me, when I bought my first franchise, I had been looking at a franchise prospect. I've been looking at a franchise for quite a long time. I was going to buy a resale. It wasn't quite the right fit for me though, and I saw something else at franchise in the meantime. So by the time I came to buy that franchise, the one that I actually bought, I was ready. I knew I wanted a franchise. I already had all the information. This was probably the right one for me. I met with the franchisor and off we went. I signed the contract that week. Not everyone's going to feel like that. And we have to be able to allow for that. In the same way that in buying behaviour, everyone has a different kind of buyer behaviour. So will your franchisees. So the real reason that prospects are disappearing after they've had the call with you is really simply that they're not ready to buy yet. You haven't done enough at that point to make them feel secure, safe in the purchase, and ready. And that's all fixable. It's all fixable. From a conversion rate, also make sure that you're tracking your conversions, because most franchisors don't know their numbers. Ideally, if you're tracking like 30% of the calls and 30% of the calls are converting, that's a great conversion rate. There's room for improvement. But if you're converting less than 30%, you're leaving money on the table. It's an issue that you can fix in your process. Having a robust sales process will absolutely be a game changer for you there. Making sure that you are putting out the right information and that you're visible as well. Because if they're not opening your emails, they still need to see you somewhere else. And on social media is a really easy win, or ideally if you can get in front of them, even better. That's not always possible. So ask them on the call, what would make this a no-brainer? Make sure that you've got education as well as sales information and a drive for action in your nurture process. Make sure your nurture process is not just like the old school 5 emails. That's not going to do it. Okay, it's absolutely not. If you know that it takes on average 6 months for somebody to buy a franchise and you stop talking to them after 5 days, you've lost them before you've even, potentially gained them. If after your post kind of like discovery call, your process is to sporadically follow them up because you don't have a defined process in place, you're leaving money on the table right there as well. Don't be afraid to keep them engaged. And honestly, I'd be looking at building out almost like a pre-franchise program. What can you give them? What can you help them with? What skills can you even offer them to help them to see that they are capable in the way that you know that they are from your experience of bringing other people like that in there? Really powerful one this week. I think, we're always going to be ghosted. That's always going to happen. The aim is never to get 100% conversion rate, because then we're just putting the wrong people through. And this is why volume isn't necessarily the win in franchise recruitment. But those precious leads that you've got to do more with them. You've got to do more to support them and bring them in. That's it for this episode. See you on the next one. Before we finish up today, I'd love to just thank our podcast sponsors, Book When and Make Your Mark Podcast Agency, without whom this episode wouldn't have been possible. You can find more information on both amazing companies in the show notes. If you've enjoyed listening to today's episode, please also make sure that you hit the subscribe button, and I would absolutely love it if you left a review too. See you next time.